wild wail of an unknown guy could be heard in all the surroundings of the small and abandoned town, which was inhabited only by monsters. Trying to escape from the zombies catching up with the hero, he shouted that it probably wouldn't work out because the enemy was much bigger. And indeed, the monster was literally running at their heels, seeing nothing but their only target. The young man saw that one of the zombies got close to him as quickly as possible and therefore decided to pretend that he slipped to buy time. Fortunately, the guy succeeded in his plan. Despite this, he understood that zombies are very smart and can even arrange ambushes. Heading in the opposite direction, the player talked about how he had only recently arrived in this world, but now it seemed that everything would end as quickly as it began. Suddenly, luck smiled on the young man who smelled the aroma of food. Our hero was sure that there were definitely people ahead, and therefore he would have a chance if he managed to get to the nearest houses. However, a moment later, the young man felt as if his foot had stepped on some kind of stone, which would now cause him to fall. The most unpleasant thing was that the player not only fell to the ground, but before that, he turned several more somersaults. Lying face down, the young man was afraid to pick it up, because he knew perfectly well who he might see in front of him. Suddenly, the guy heard a wild scream. It was a zombie who did not give up trying to catch up with the annoying person who invaded this world. Raising his hand in the air, the young man shouted that he promised that he would never move to other worlds again. In the next second, something even more unusual happened, because someone loaded the gun and even managed to fire it. For a moment, our hero thought that time had stopped because he did not understand how to proceed in the future. However, an even greater shock awaited the young man when the bullet reached its target and hit the monster directly in the head. The hero, who had just got up from the ground, now fell on it again, but this time a zombie also fell on top of him. This was the most unpleasant thing that a young man who did not realize why events had started to develop so quickly faced. At the same time, a stranger reloaded his weapon again. And it was just in time, as a new group of monsters was already closing in on the player, who was still reeling from what had just happened to him. The boy watched carefully, even though he couldn't quite believe it was even possible. Half rising, the young man stammered to himself if he was really saved. In the next second, the young man heard a girl who was standing behind him call out to him. A stranger holding a gun in her hands asked the young man how long he was still going to sit on the ground, hugging the zombie that she shot a few minutes ago. The startled player looked in horror at the monster, which by this time had already put its head on his shoulder. With lightning speed, he pushed the monster away from him and yelled at it not to even touch it. Looking at his rescuer, the young man said with joy in his voice that he was very grateful to her for being on time. However, the beauty was in no hurry to relax. As before, she held the young man at gunpoint, loudly asking who he was, as well as what his name was. Rising from the ground, the young man said that his name was Chen Yan. His name was spelled exactly like the sun. The girl still didn't understand what the stranger was doing near their camp, hearing the young man say that he was just lost, and therefore completely accidentally wandered into these places. But the local resident did not believe it. She proudly stated that she heard the stranger say something about moving to other worlds. The young man understood that the truth is not always good. If he even thinks to say it, then the beauty will think that he is crazy. As she gripped her weapon more tightly, she realized that Chen Yan's silence meant that he was probably hiding something and didn't want to live. Suddenly, the stranger noticed that she could smell food, even though she didn't seem to have any idea where it was coming from. Realizing that it was impossible to be distracted, the girl asked what the young man had in his bag. Taking a Chinese snack out of his bag, the young man tried to explain what it was. Holding the bag in his hands, the guy said that he was just going to eat la chow, but suddenly came across a zombie, so he had to postpone his lunch. For a moment, the girl thought, and then stated that in the hands of a stranger is food. As Chen Yan passed the package to a friend, he said that he could share it with her if she wanted. Looking at the meat strips, the beauty noted to herself that she didn't like the color of this food. It was quite possible that the snack might be poison. At the same time, the food smelled very good, and the girl did not eat anything for several days. Although in the current conditions, this was very important. That is why the beauty, despite everything, snatched the available food from our hero, deciding that now she doesn't care what's wrong with this snack. The stranger once again thought that the consequences will wait for her after, but now I want to eat a little. She finally opened the bag and was about to take a small bite, knowing that she had made up her mind. A moment later, the young man was watching as his rescuer carefully chewed what she had taken from him. Suddenly, the beauty declared that it was actually very tasty because she could taste the oil, seasonings, and other ingredients. Chen Yan was glad that his friend liked this food, because in the middle of the wasteland during the apocalypse, no normal person would refuse to eat. At that moment, our hero remembered the times when he was the most ordinary office employee, looking at the computer monitor for days. A few days ago, the guy was fired, although he did not expect this at all, and therefore lost his only source of income. Having collected all his things in a small box, the young man was walking somewhere, although he didn't even know where exactly. After returning home, the guy decided that he didn't want to leave any memories of his former place of work, so he decided to sort out everything that was in the box and throw out the unnecessary ones. But it wasn't until Chen Yan looked inside the box that he found a strange ring that might have rolled up accidentally when he was ordering snacks. The young man did not know what kind of decoration it was, but his curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to put it on his finger. And then something indescribable began to happen. The room seemed to dim, and the floor shook. The young man had a feeling that he was quickly falling somewhere. In the next second, our hero realized that he was in some ruined city. A skeleton was lying in front of him, and a huge rat was looking into his eyes. Normally, the guy would think that seeing a rat is not scary at all, because these rodents can't do anything to people. But at that moment, Chen Yan didn't understand first where he was, and second, who was actually next to him. At the same time, the rat began to grin, clearly demonstrating its own superiority to the intruder. The young man began to shout, noting that he wanted to get home as soon as possible. Moreover, the hero hoped that all this was a bad dream that caught him off guard. After these words, the young man felt as if everything was spinning around him again. A moment later, Chen Yan was sitting on the floor again, but this time in his own room, which hadn't changed in the least. Looking around, our hero wanted to make sure that all this is really happening and that he really has everything in order with his head. Looking at the ring that was still on his finger, the young man thought that this decoration gives him the opportunity to move freely between the familiar real world and the one in which the apocalypse has come. Over the past few years, our hero has watched various programs and films devoted to such topics, and therefore he knew something about it. First, food in the apocalypse is valued as something most expensive because it is very small, and secondly, it can be a great currency for exchange. If you use this knowledge correctly, you can simply hold out in the worst case, and in the best case, it will be possible to achieve a lot. Realizing that his thoughts would lead to nothing anyway, the young man returned to the place where he was at the specific moment and again carefully looked at his friend, who continued to chew food. Looking into the bag, the girl noticed with resentment in her voice that all the snacks were gone, although she didn't even notice when it happened. And then she began to justify that she would never get impudent. It was just that it was so delicious that she swallowed everything in an instant. Chen Yan explained that there was no shortage of food in the organization where he was a member, but they were lacking a lot, so he was sent to exchange supplies. The stranger couldn't believe that in their difficult time, there were some people who didn't feel the need and could eat as much as they wanted. Embarrassed, the beauty said that she knew the local area very well, and therefore, if the guy hired her, he would not regret it. Then she added that she didn't need the money. She was willing to work for 15 packs of Chinese food a month. Now the trump cards were in the hands of the young man, who thoughtfully stated that he did not know anything about his new acquaintance, and therefore it would be difficult to negotiate. Suddenly, the girl asked what the young man wanted to know about her, and immediately shouted that her name was Li Lu. Wanting to make fun of the beauty, the guy decided to ask what gender she belongs to, hearing a sharp reproach that the uninvited guest most likely has something wrong with his vision, since he can't see it. There was a question about her age, and Li Lu answered oddly that she was 19 years old. The young man was embarrassed, but replied that firstly, the girl looks quite plump, despite the fact that they had an apocalypse, and secondly, it doesn't seem at all like the beauty was so young. It was obvious that the stranger was mocking him, which was why he paused for a moment and coughed slightly. Suddenly, Chen Yan happily announced that he had decided to hire his new acquaintance, accepting her terms of cooperation and salary. The girl really needed food, and therefore she noted that she was very happy to hear it. At the same time, the guy asked if the beauty thought that it would be much easier to kill him and easily get all the food available. But Li Lu proudly declared that she was very smart, and therefore understands that it is better to keep a stranger around all the time to guarantee a full stomach. She pointed to something and said that it was time for them to leave, that she wanted to show him the local camp before sunset. After a while, the girl brought the young man somewhere, saying that now they are in place. The beauty continued to say that they were in District D, where other people also live. Looking around in horror, the young man could not believe that anyone lived here, because this place looked worse than even the poorest slums he had ever seen. At the same time, he knew that he didn't need to live here permanently. The most important thing was to look around to see if he could find something valuable. Seeing Li Lu pick up her weapon again, our hero became alert and immediately began to look around carefully. There were people everywhere, but they were cautiously looking at the stranger, which made them extremely attentive. With a smile, the girl explained that the young man should not be afraid of local residents. They are afraid of strangers. This is normal, but do not focus on this. Pointing to one of the doors, Lilu proudly announced that this was her room, so if a guest needed to rest, they could go inside. Despite the difficult living conditions of these people, Chen Yan felt that it was a great honor for him to visit the apartment of such a beauty. But when he opened the door, the young man was surprised at what he saw. Grimacing, our hero admitted that this place looks very modest. He expected that it would be more comfortable inside. The hostess knew that she didn't have to explain anything, given what they'd been through earlier, so she invited her guest to sit down. After that, the beauty explained that this area D, which the locals call the local rat area, is quite small. But its advantage is that it has everything you need for a decent life. Realizing that it was necessary to talk directly about the case, the girl asked what the stranger was planning to exchange food for. If this is what is available in the camp, she will definitely find it. Holding a cup in one hand, the young man waved his other hand, explaining that a beauty should know what gold and silver are. Surprised, Lilu asked a counter question about what the guy needed this junk for. In turn, our hero did not understand how these precious metals can be called junk, because in the young man's hometown, this junk costs 800 for 1 gram. Scratching her head, the local resident explained that before the disaster, silver and gold may have had little value. However, these metals cannot be eaten. There is no sense from it, so the locals have long switched to natural exchange. Realizing that Chen Yan couldn't tell the truth, he pointed out that this was their first deal, and it wasn't so much the exchange itself that was important, but establishing trust and building the foundation for future cooperation. After a minute, the guy began to slowly open his bag in order to show something to a friend. Suddenly, his new acquaintance saw more food than she probably hadn't seen in a very long time. A joyful Lilu immediately shouted that it was just something unbelievable. And the young man has already said that if everything works out, then 1/10 of this food will belong to the beauty. In addition, the girl will also be able to keep a commission. Realizing that there was a lot of food, the local resident could not believe that 1/10 of it would actually go to her. Despite this, the girl said that even to establish trust, to exchange precious food for completely useless gold, it would not be too unprofitable for the young man. But he replied that he just wanted the beauty to do as they agreed, and added that he was relying on her to wait in this room. Realizing that food was at stake, Lilu said that the boss didn't have to worry, because she would definitely justify the trust placed in him. In the next second, the beauty walked over to her weapon that was standing to the side and took it. Before leaving, our hero's new friend explained that he should not go anywhere, because she would manage and return immediately. Chen Yan thought to himself that he had given away his last 100 wen for this bag of food, and therefore this deal was absolutely necessary for him. Lying on the bed, the young man thought that there was absolutely nothing to do in this place, since there was no television or internet. Suddenly, our hero's attention fell on a newspaper that was hanging on the wall. Or rather, he realized that there were several of them. Chen Yan didn't know where he was, but he wanted to know more about it, so he decided to read what was being reported in the press when it was still available. It turned out that unpleasant events began to develop in the 2235th year of our era. Then there was a great catastrophe due to the fact that nuclear bombs were used. This led to gene contamination, which local scientists could not do anything about since the process was already started. The young man realized that the appearance of the zombies that he saw was not just an accident. Previously, they were quite normal citizens. Even though an entire hour had already passed, Chen Yan continued to carefully study the newspaper clippings because there was so much information. The young man remembered Lilu talking about the blue star that everyone saw after 200 years. It was actually a nuclear war. And with even greater horror, he said aloud that tens of thousands of nuclear bombs had destroyed half the population of the blue star. It also affected a complete change in the planet's ecosystem, turning it into a wasteland. The guy realized that he had previously thought that he had moved to some completely different planet, but it turned out that he had just traveled through time. But I couldn't think it through, because in the next second, the door to the room opened with a bang, and a joyful Lilu entered. Throwing the bag on the floor, the beauty explained that there wasn't much gold and silver in the camp. It was almost all there was. The metals were completely useless, so no one collects them. Our hero looked at the bag, but did not understand what a little precious metals means, in the opinion of his new friend. Looking inside, the young man couldn't believe that he was seeing such a large amount of gold bars. Chen Yan couldn't reveal himself, so he just shouted that he liked the way the metal glistened. Glad that this moment had come, he thought that if he hadn't been in this place, the night would never have ended for him, but now all the bad things were over. At that moment, the confused beauty started talking about how that food was much more expensive than gold and silver, so she thought about something. And she added that she had exchanged them for a first-rank enhancement potion. It was only a low-grade potion, but it was absolutely pure, so you can enter it right now. There's still no risk. The girl showed the guy her purchase so that he also understood what it is. Lilu didn't know who her new acquaintance was, but she assumed that he was also human, since he didn't look like a zombie or any other species at all. A local resident explained that after the guy uses this potion, at least he will be able to cope with a couple of low-level zombies. Passing the gift to a friend, the girl noted that the danger in this place is everywhere, so you cannot always rely on your luck. Clearing his throat slightly, the young man explained that their organization is quite powerful. They are safe on the road, so the only problem is the exchange process itself, although he still thanked them for such a gift. Closing the bag, Chen Yan explained that their first exchange had gone well, so it was time for him to go back. Our hero explained that he would come back the next day, and he would do it primarily to pay off Lilu for the first month of work. As the young man left, he once again announced that he was leaving. Looking after this strange young man, the girl said in a low voice that the guy can travel through the wasteland alone without encountering danger, so he has incredibly many secrets. At the same time, she knew that there were people around her whom she should have known, but even they were always hiding everything. However, at that moment, the beauty was interested in the food that was right in front of her, and therefore decided to eat a little. Knowing that it was delicious, Lilu decided that the most important thing for her was that this stranger continue to supply her food. At the same time, Chen Yan was literally sneaking through the streets of the empty city, knowing that if he was attacked by zombies again, he would definitely not be able to get rid of them so easily. Touching his ring, the young man decided that now was the time to go home. It was also important that none of the locals saw what was happening at that moment. Only a few seconds passed, and the young man was glad to realize that the familiar outline of his room was beginning to appear around him. When Chen Yan got home, he looked into the bag with some apprehension because he didn't fully believe that the precious metals had come to him so easily. The young man realized that everything really worked out. The bag that was filled to the top with ingots remains the same. Raising his wealth, our hero again and again rejoiced at how much he was still lucky, because now you can forget about work forever. The young man decided that it was enough to take these precious metals to a pawn shop where they would be quickly exchanged for money. Chen Yan immediately began to dream of being at the very top and being able to buy absolutely anything he wanted. At the same time, he knew not to carry too much without drawing too much attention to himself. Hiding the bag under the bed, our hero told himself that so far he had no explanation for where all this gold came from, and therefore it was better to leave it here. Despite the fact that the trip takes only a few seconds, although it cannot even be called a trip, this journey was not easy. But there was no need to complain, because it brought not only money, but also the potion that Lilu gave at the end. Taking a small flask in his hand, the young man didn't know if he should use this medicine to enhance it or not. The young man realized that his body was too weak for the post-apocalyptic world. Now he couldn't even deal with an ordinary zombie, let alone something more serious. Therefore, if you want to survive in the wasteland, you need to become stronger and more resilient. The problem was that modern people were used to having instructions for everything, and this thing didn't have one. The young man remembered that his friend said about one injection, and therefore decided to do it. The young man was determined, of course. It might be foolish of him to believe Lilu, but there was no need for her to harm the stranger. After giving Chen Yan the injection, it didn't seem like anything out of the ordinary was happening. He felt like he was back to normal. Looking at the small point from the injection, the guy with disappointment in his voice noted that his strength is the same as it was before. But suddenly, something started happening, which caused the flask that was still in the youth's fist to be instantly crushed by him. For a moment, the young man felt as if he was flying somewhere because he lost track of time and even space. The young man fell. He felt something unusual, but the most terrible thing, he had no idea how to fix it. Lying on his floor, the guy continued to talk about how very bad he was. Our hero had the feeling that each of his muscles was being torn into 1,000 pieces. For a split second, Chen Yan began to blame himself for taking that step in the first place, since there was a huge gap between the two worlds. The young man was sure that his condition probably wouldn't improve. The whole body of our hero was on fire. He could not even get up and call for help. All of a sudden, the unpleasant feeling receded, allowing Chen Yang to slowly stand up and lean on the nightstand. Looking down at his hands, the young man happily said that it was finally over, so he could breathe a sigh of relief. But now the hero realized that he really changed. Going to the mirror, the young man once again carefully examined himself. And this time the guy was happy, saying that even the most famous bodybuilders in the country will envy such muscles. Despite the fact that the world after the apocalypse actually suffered a lot, its technology is much higher than what was in the world of our hero. Lilu said that this is the lowest ranked potion, so if you use a stronger one, then the results will become more global. But his thoughts could not continue because someone knocked on the apartment. It was Shu Ya who apologetically remarked that she had forgotten her keys, so she had to knock on the doors. Chen Yan said that there was nothing wrong with that since they were flatmates, so they should help each other out. However, the confused blonde was silent. It seemed that she did not recognize her neighbor, who had changed, and very much. But after a short period of time, the girl relaxed and started laughing like never before. He didn't understand what was going on with Shu Ya because he hadn't seen her like this before. Touching the young man's chest, the blonde explained that she did not even notice that the young man was so pumped up. It seemed to her that he had an ordinary physique. And then she added that the guy probably somehow found out that she failed the audition and therefore decided to cheer her up a little. The touch of the neighbor had the proper effect, after which our hero loudly shouted that everything was completely different from what his friend thought. Running to his room, the young man shouted that nothing had changed in him. He just forgot to get dressed. When Chen Yan went to his room, he thought that his girlfriend would think that he was definitely not all right, perhaps even think that he was planning something on her. However, now the body is pumped up. Nothing can be done about it, although no one will notice it under the clothes, and therefore you can no longer worry that someone else will stare like that. Moving down the street, the young man thought that he needed to sell the gold as soon as possible in order to understand how much money he would have. Suddenly, the young man seemed to be interested in something, and so he carefully looked in front of him. There was some kind of advertising stand on the road ahead, which caught Chen Yan's attention. But the point was not in the stand and not in the inscription, but in the fact that our hero's vision became much sharper since it became possible to read the text located several hundred meters away. Although this wasn't the only thing that struck him, as he passed the intersection, he could hear what the women were saying, even though they were standing very far away. This meant that the young man's hearing was much sharper than before. Chen Yan smiled and thought that this unique potion gave him the ability to level up all of his physical attributes, not just increase his muscles and stamina. Even after a nuclear war, the technology of the wasteland is still 200 years ahead of their time, so the value of this place must be explored. After a while, the guy was already standing in front of a jewelry store, hoping that this place would definitely not give up bullion. At that moment, our hero felt more confident than ever. It seemed that he had never had such determination in his life. Going inside, the guy saw an employee who immediately hurried to greet the visitor. Chen Yan immediately got down to business, wondering if the owner was still there, as he was planning to discuss an important matter with him. The girl did not understand why to bother the boss, and therefore politely replied that the guest could tell her what he needed. The customer didn't answer, instead slamming his bag down on the table. Pulling out a few ingots, the guy confidently said that the employee hardly has the authority to deal with such cases. The brunette stared at the table in surprise, thinking to herself that she had never seen so much gold. However, our hero was not angry with the beauty, because until yesterday, he also did not think that he would ever feel like this. After that, the employee asked Chen Yan to follow her to the chief's office. The fat man immediately stated that his name was Lin Tan, he owned a store, and he wanted to know what the guy needed, as well as how to contact him. Our hero did not see the point in hiding his last name, and therefore immediately introduced himself, noting that he was pleased to deal with a good person. The store owner immediately invited the important customer to sit down to discuss all the nuances. Looking at the ingots that were placed in front of the man, the latter asked if it was true that the young man wanted to sell them. Chen Yan also decided that the truth was best this time, so he replied that he wanted to sell everything he had brought with him. The fat man explained that since the amount was quite large, he needed to test the sample with their instruments. Lin Tan hoped that the guy wouldn't mind. The young man had nothing to hide. He said that the owner can do what he sees fit. And he thought to himself that in the wasteland, gold and silver are absolutely useless. No one will think to forge them, so he is absolutely sure of the verification. When the owner saw the percentage on the instrument, he tapped the ingots several more times as if trying to make sure that they were actually genuine. Linton had already realized that this was the purest 24-karat gold, even though he didn't understand how such a thing was possible. Realizing that there was no doubt that the owner himself had realized that it was gold, Chen Yan asked about what they would do next. The fat man explained that the quality was excellent, and he could offer 400 yuan per gram. Hearing about this amount, our hero automatically squeezed the glass that was in his hands. Our hero immediately calculated that in one ingot, a kilogram of gold, which means that it costs 400,000. For 3 ingots, you can get more than 1 million. Despite the fact that the price was lower than the market price, the guy understood that it did not matter, since the profit was still huge. But the joy did not last long, as the store owner immediately went on to say that he needed checks for the purchase of these bars. The young man didn't want to give up, saying that he didn't have any documents. Although Lin Tan didn't have to worry about the bars being genuine, they weren't stolen, and there wouldn't be any problems with them. However, the man said that he could not rely on the boy's words, because taking such a huge batch is an unjustified risk. You never know where these ingots have been before. At that moment, Chen Yan realized that he shouldn't squeeze the glass so hard, but rather relax. Our hero politely turned to the fat man and suggested that he solve it all like civilized people. The young man wanted to know what the real amount the owner could offer him. If the price suited him, they would make a deal. As he took the gold bar from Lin Tan's hand, he continued to say, if there is no contract, then he will be happy to look for someone else. The owner knew that this gold was the best he had ever seen. It would make excellent jewelry, for which he would get many times more, so he offered to pay 840,000 for the entire product. Even such a sum was something indescribable for a guy who lived from paycheck to paycheck, and therefore in a minute he already received a money transfer from the owner. After putting the bullion bars on the table, a joyful Chen Yan declared that the entire amount was already in his account. Dealing with such an operational person was very pleasant. Shaking hands with our hero, the fat man said that if suddenly the guy still has such ingots, he can always contact him. After a while, the young man was already walking down the street. He was glad that for 3 ingots, he managed to get a huge sum. There was still a lot of similar goods under the bed, and if you sold them, you would never have to think about money at all. The young man's joy knew no bounds. He shouted that he had finally become rich. At this time, Zhou Dandan, who was another neighbor of our hero, couldn't find her phone, hearing the blonde yell that she saw it on the coffee table. When she returned, the girl realized that her device was actually located where she was told. However, already in the doorway, the brunette literally bumped into her neighbor and immediately froze in place. The young man smiled and asked where Zhou Dandan was going in such a hurry. Shuya, entering the room, explained that their acquaintance had just returned home. Despite this, the boss called and demanded to return to work because there was some important business there. But the guy said that he received money today and therefore he would like to treat the girls to something delicious to celebrate this event. Despite the excellent offer, Zhou Dandan admitted that she could not escape from the boss, but hoped that the blonde would eat her portion, and in general, the guys would be able to have a good rest. And then when she returned, she proudly declared that the young man did not even have any plans for her neighbor, especially when she was not around, having heard that the brunette had a bad opinion of him. Then she ran into the elevator and once again shouted that she wished the guys to have a good evening. Crossing her arms, Shuyo wanted to know where her neighbor was planning to invite her, knowing that he wasn't rich at all. Smiling, our hero noted that they can go to the Real Grand, if the beauty does not mind. The brunette didn't know how to react to this, so she replied that the guy must be confusing something, because this is a 5-star hotel, the best in their city. Chen Yan knew that he wouldn't explain anything, so he was about to leave, but he added that they would definitely meet at the designated place in the evening. After a while, our hero returned to his room to get ingots from under the bed. The young man did not want the gold to lie in this place, and not because he was afraid, but because money is always safer. Chen Yan knew that it was too dangerous to go to the same store where he was in the morning, so he successfully made a deal elsewhere. Although this was not the only place, as the young man managed to find more shops where he was unspeakably welcome. All jewelry owners understood that buying high-quality gold at low prices is a real success. The young man was also thinking about such good fortune when he looked at his account balance and realized that he was really rich because he had 4 million yuan at his disposal. The guy knew that he was incredibly grateful for the apocalypse, where gold is literally lying on the ground and no one is interested in it. But I couldn't be happy for a long time because our hero's phone rang. Chen Yan replied with a sarcastic tone, saying that Guangji probably missed him very much, so he decided to call. The young man didn't want to say anything because he was busy with something else at the same time. Although then he asked why the friend did not tell him that he lost his job, because it is important, maybe that the guy does not have money for an apartment or it is necessary for some other needs. Our hero was silent for a few seconds, thinking about what to say best in this case. After that, he replied that he was fine with the money, and therefore you cannot worry about him at all. Although he then realized that he hadn't told anyone about the dismissal, so he wanted to know who Guangji had told about the incident. For a while, the acquaintance was silent. He did not understand what he should say. However, after a moment, he explained that the ex-girlfriend of a friend had told him about this situation. Feng Jia said that it was inconvenient for her to call herself, so she asked a friend to help. Thinking of this girl, he faltered, deciding that he hadn't even thought she cared about him. But the friend continued to point out that it seems that the former is still worried about the fate of Chen Yan, only it is completely unclear why they broke up. In a despondent tone, The young man explained that his girlfriend's mother wanted the guy to be able to buy an apartment in Dijing, but Guangji understands exactly what kind of family our hero is from. The friend only replied that after such stories, each time he has less and less desire to ever get married. While his friend was still talking, Chen Yan asked in a puzzled voice how Feng Jia knew that he was fired, since they hadn't spoken in a long time. Guangji said that the information comes from the rich Zhang Jinglong, who is very fond of the beauty. Moreover, there are rumors that this person bought shares in the company where the young man worked. In addition, it was he who got fired. Of course, the money was no longer important to the young man, but he was still angry because he knew that they had just taken him and deliberately survived. Realizing that the friend is at the limit, the friend asked him to control himself and in no case did anything stupid. Chen Yan was a smart person, so he explained that he wasn't going to ruin his life because of some impudent rich man. After hearing about it, Guangji said that it was a pleasure to talk, but it was necessary to continue working. Not wanting his friend to worry, our hero once again wished him good luck and added that everything would be fine. After hanging up the phone, the guy clenched his fist with all his might, saying that some unscrupulous rich man decided to dispose of other people's lives as he pleases. However, at that moment, there was no time for reflection. The young man remembered that he had promised his neighbor to spend the evening with her. That was why it was necessary to run, so as not to keep the girl waiting. At the appointed time, Chen Yan was already standing in front of the hotel, waiting for the blonde to arrive. Looking around, he didn't know where Shuya might be if she had recently called and warned him that she was coming. But a moment later, an expensive car stopped in front of the entrance to the restaurant. The young man did not immediately understand who it was, because first the legs appeared, although at the same time a female voice called the young man by name. Getting out of the car, a friend of our hero apologized for making the flatmate wait. Passers-by at the sight of the blonde began to discuss among themselves that the stranger must be some kind of celebrity, otherwise it cannot be. But the beauty didn't see anything and no one. She didn't understand why Chen Yan froze in place and didn't say anything. After all, she had apologized for being late. Embarrassed and blushing, the youth finally managed to force out a few words, explaining that they had been living in the same apartment for 3 months. But until that day, he hadn't realized that Shu Ya was so beautiful. Smiling, the girl replied that a friend invited her to such a chic place, and therefore she must necessarily correspond to him. Taking the guy by the arm, the blonde said that now they can go inside, although this gesture even more confused our hero, who had no idea how to behave. Looking into the eyes of her neighbor, the beauty asked why he was so embarrassed, because this is the usual basic etiquette. A few minutes later, the waiter brought the menu to the guests and asked them if they would order immediately, or if they would take a closer look at the name. Shuya had never been to a place like this before, so she began to carefully read what was offered. But the reading ended too quickly, because the girl paid attention not to the dishes, but to the price tag, thinking to herself that this is very expensive. While handing over the menu, Chen Yan calmly explained that they would take 3 specialty dishes and 2 crabs. Rising from her seat, the beauty said that crabs cost thousands each, so she did not understand why so much money was spent. The young man could not tell the whole truth about his financial situation and decided to laugh it off. Noting that he had money, in any case, he could pay for 2 crabs. Folding her arms across her chest, the flatmate continued to say that up to this time, she had seen the young man eat only cheap snacks, but now he decided to have dinner at a restaurant, pretending that he looked like rich people. And again, the guy cheated, saying that his family was paid compensation for the demolition of the house. Believing in this funny story, the blonde happily declared that since everything is really so, then she does not mind eating so delicious and so expensive. After finishing dinner, the beauty honestly said that it was something incredible, hearing a friend suggest going somewhere else. But Shuya explained that she was full, so she didn't want to eat anymore. Suddenly, the discussion of the guys was interrupted because some impolite person rudely called out to our hero. To the young man's surprise, it was the same Zhang Jinglong that he had talked to his friend about just a few hours ago. In a cold tone, Chen Yan said that the world was really small, as he never expected to meet his enemy here. The impudent man immediately said that he did not understand what the kid had left in this place, because he could not afford such a thing. The young man asked if this place really belongs to the blonde. If not, then he plans to buy it out in order to put the guy out of here. Laughing, Zhang Jinglong noted that he didn't think that beggar already knew what had happened. Shuya couldn't understand what was going on, so she asked her neighbor if he was familiar with this cheeky guy. And while the girl was communicating with a friend, the ill-wisher thought that a real beauty was standing with the enemy, which he must definitely get. Moreover, he decided that he had to show this Shuya who she really stood in front of so that he could become her hero. Walking closer, Zhang Jinglong told the girl not to fall for this man who didn't deserve her attention. He added that they went to school together, He knows Chen Yan very well. This man is a beggar. He was recently fired from his job, so now he can't even pay for an apartment, let alone something more. If a young man brings a beauty to such a place, it means that he spends the last money just to please and make a good impression. At first, he will let the dust in his eyes, and therefore he will clean it so that neither love nor money will remain. Hearing about this, our hero seethed and shouted that the blonde was probably measuring himself. Smiling, Shuya asked if it was true that she had been warned about all this out of the kindness of her heart. Making a clever appearance, the ill-wisher replied that more than anything else in the world, he does not like when beautiful and naive girls are deceived. Then he added that their company is now looking for the face of the brand, and therefore he offers a stranger to try himself in this role. After that, the young man kindly handed the beauty his business card. But the reaction was unexpected. Throwing the plastic aside, Shuya proudly stated that she didn't need it at all. I don't understand what caused such a reaction. The young man continued to say that they have very good payment in conditions, and therefore the girl should definitely think about it. Holding the young man's hand, his neighbor said that she was Chen Yan's girlfriend, and it was unpleasant for her to hear some strange person talking about such bad things. And then she added that with a traitor like Blondan, the company would go bankrupt sooner or later. Turning away, our hero called his friend the drama queen and heard the beauty add that she was an actress, and this should never be forgotten. And in a loud voice, she said that it was time for them to go home. There was no point in wasting time on all sorts of garbage. Such words hurt Zhang Jinglong very much, who didn't understand what such a prominent girl saw in an ordinary poor man. The ill-wisher was about to follow him when he heard someone call out to him. It was Feng Jia, who was asking if the young man could take her home. The blonde man took his time, explaining that he had booked a table at the bar, so he would like to sit down a little longer, although the girl didn't like the idea. Before leaving, the friend explained that she would transfer money for her part of the account. But clearly the young man did not want this, wanting to explain himself, and therefore asked that his friend stay a little longer. But it seemed as if the girl didn't hear the guy or didn't want to, so she quickly got into the car. Offended, Zhang Jinglong said that this beauty works in his company, but for some reason he allows himself to behave in this way. At the same time, while walking around the city at night, Shuya recalled that when they left the hotel, they met a very unpleasant person who almost ruined their entire evening. The young man didn't comment on it. He just said that through meeting this arrogant, affectionate rich man, he had learned something very important for himself. The blonde didn't know all the nuances, so she wanted to understand what her flatmate was talking about. When our hero got the money, he was always thinking about where to go to turn around in a big way. And then he shouted loudly that the moment had come when he made the final decision. Chen Yan would open his own game production company and ruin this pathetic and arrogant man. The girl was not particularly happy with this idea. She explained that business is always a big risk, and therefore complained to a friend to weigh everything before investing all the money. However, the guy noted that there is no need to worry so much. You just need to watch and enjoy the show. Returning home in the evening, our hero thought about his brilliant idea to carry gold from the wasteland. At the same time, it was a very dangerous activity. The young man understood that there might come a time when one of the owners of the jewelry store would suspect something, then checks would begin. Therefore, it is necessary to legalize income and create an appropriate business in this world. After all, this is the only way to avoid attracting special attention to yourself, since a person who has his own business is automatically considered the one who has money. Looking at the TV, the young man understood that the main advantage of the parallel world lies in its advanced technologies. Judging from Lilu's words, only 10 years had passed since the disaster. The technological legacy couldn't completely disappear. For sure, in different camps there are many specialists in various fields. You just need to make an effort to find them. Given the post-apocalypse salary levels, there isn't much food left to hire local professionals. With technologies that are 200 years ahead of the current ones, you can easily create a couple of revolutionary games. The next day, when the young man called someone, he heard that his application had been sent. As soon as it was approved, the young man would receive a notification. A delighted Chen Yan noted that this was actually great news. The guy knew for sure that he would leave the registration of the company to the agency. The next step is to find first-class employees. As for the first priority, it was to purchase food and immediately go to the wasteland. Our hero decided that since this is the world of the future, it is better not to carry snacks there, but to use something more useful and necessary. Glancing at one of the packs, he decided that if someone found out the production date, they would probably have a problem. That is why the young man decided to choose a completely different tactic going to the cellar. After looking at the empty cart of the customer, the employee happily asked the boy what he decided to buy. Pointing at the produce, Chen Yan proudly stated that he was going to buy 25 kilograms of pork. Hearing about this, the store employee thought that she just accidentally heard this figure, and therefore she decided to ask again. Half an hour later, the young man carefully looked at what was in front of him, thinking with satisfaction that this should be enough. The young man muttered to himself that he had taken, in addition to meat, 20 kilograms of potatoes, 20 kilograms of corn, and 20 kachans of Peking cabbage. Now the challenge was to get it all home and somehow get it back to the wasteland. Finally, the guy managed to get to the house where he put all the boxes on the floor with a bang. Chen Yan said that due to his improved physical abilities, it wasn't too difficult to carry it all from the store to the house. Although on the other hand, if you constantly carry boxes like this, it can be difficult. It is clear that now the volumes are still small, but when the company launches, it will be necessary to feed dozens or even hundreds of people. And then what to do, because you will have to buy tons of products. Suddenly, the ring on our hero's finger began to glow with a bright light. He didn't understand what was going on, because at that particular moment, he wasn't going to go to the wasteland yet. Watching everything, our hero did not realize what was happening, because the boxes that had just been right in front of him now began to literally evaporate. Somehow, the decoration itself decided to move all this cargo to a parallel world. After that, Chen Yan concentrated, thinking about the fact that he was about to end up in the wasteland. But what was the surprise of the young man when he realized that the ring did not move the boxes? It placed them inside this decoration. In order to make sure that this is actually the case, the young man immediately ordered the jewelry to return these boxes back to the same place where they were previously. The guy watched in surprise as the boxes were returned and in the same place. Chen Yan wanted to train this skill to the point of automatism, so he immediately ordered the ring to hide the boxes again. The young man was shocked, saying that this decoration can also serve as an excellent warehouse, which is always with him. Happy and satisfied, our hero immediately began to kiss this costume jewelry, which does absolutely incredible things. He didn't really know how it worked, but he was grateful that it had worked out so well. Realizing that he was going to the wasteland anyway, he shouted loudly that now was the time to go on the road. After a moment, the young man felt like he was losing his bearings, realizing that now he should be as vigilant as possible, because there is danger lurking around. Looking around, he wanted to make sure that there were no zombies or huge rodents around. Realizing that everything was clear, the guy decided not to waste time and immediately developed the boxes so that no one would suspect anything. The young man knew that there was no way for others to know about his skills, so he would have to carry all this weight in his hands. At this time, Lilu reached into one of her packs of food supplies, wanting to eat a little. The beauty licked her finger, realizing that there wasn't much food, so it was very important to keep saving. After looking at the snacks, the local resident told herself that she still wanted to eat one portion, although there were not so many left. However, she immediately scolded herself, saying that well-packaged, non-perishable products are an incredibly valuable resource. Despite all these words, the beauty carefully observed the food, which beckoned to eat a little more. Realizing that her desire was getting the better of her, Lilu shouted even louder that one pack of them might be enough for a week if she was in some critical situation. At some point, the girl came up with an idea, but she decided not to voice it so as not to get even more upset. Although she then decided that any organization with a large supply of food would have no shortage of members if Chen Yan dared to throw away precious food like that, and immediately cut off her thought. But then she said with horror that this would mean that the young man would never come back. He could not be counted on. However, the terrible thoughts turned out to be only thoughts, because in a second, the one about whom the beauty had just been thinking came into the house. With difficulty holding the boxes, our hero asked his friend to help him a little. But Lilu didn't hear anything. She was incredibly glad that her friend had returned, so she jumped on him with all her might. At the same time, all the boxes flew in different directions, and the products that were inside also went there. Sitting on top of the young man, Lilu said over and over that the guy was fine. He managed to come again. And then, starting to cry, I noticed that she already thought that our hero had deceived her and would never appear in these places again. Confused, Chen Yan didn't understand why he would deceive anyone. But the local resident continued to note that the day before, the young man took with him only useless gold and a potion of the first level, and all this is not even close to the cost of a whole backpack with food. The company would definitely punish for this. Stroking a friend's hair, the guy calmed her down, assuring her that he had a very high status there, and you don't have to worry about it. One pack of food, it's really nothing, and besides, he exchanged all the gold because he doesn't really need it, so he didn't lose anything. He immediately added that since Lilu was so worried about food, she should immediately collect all the items that were now lying on the floor. While collecting food, the guy complained a little that everything rolled around the room. Now it takes time to return it all to the boxes. But the girl was not interested in this. She shouted that she was now holding vegetables in her hands. And if for our hero it was commonplace, then the beauty could read real surprise in her eyes. She did not believe that the organization in which the stranger is a member can even grow such crops. After scratching his head, Chen Yan replied that it wasn't unusual to see a simple head of cabbage in front of them. A local resident explained that after the great disaster, the land was poisoned, and now they can't grow vegetables. Realizing that this meant a lot to Lilu, the young man asked her not to cry, saying that she could take all these cabbages if she needed them so much. Looking at the pile of vegetables in horror, the girl asked again if she had misheard. She really could take it all. The beauty hugged the kachan as if it was something very precious and valuable. Then she replied that she could not take this cabbage because it is too valuable a resource. Lilu said that the stranger was very kind to her. He hired her, so she will take only as much as she honestly earns. When he heard that a local resident called our hero a good person, he was immediately surprised, realizing that he had earned so much money on gold that he could fill up everything with food. So he explained that he thought such a hearty meal was much better than regular snacks, so it would be better if the beauty took all the things he brought her. As he passed the meat over, he added that if his new friend needed or wanted anything else, she just had to tell him honestly. Then he said that in return, the girl should work harder, then everything will be fair. After looking at all this mountain of products, the beauty replied that she would do everything that depends on her. As for our hero, he said that before they were only as a superior and subordinate, but now Lilu will become his assistant. She will answer all his questions. With a certain sadness in her voice, the girl said that she understood everything. Pointing to the boxes, the young man explained that this time he had brought vegetables and meat, but he wanted his friend to help hire as many people as possible. Surprised Beauty did not understand what the guy might have requirements. After some thought, the guy said that people should be loyal. This is the most important thing. In addition, you need to find capable employees. Lilu admitted that they should go to another city. There are about 10,000 survivors there. Surely among all these people, there will be able to find those who are capable and those who will be interested in permanent work. When our hero heard that he would have to go to some gray rat, he asked that they were in the same village. Realizing that the stranger was completely confused, the beauty said that now she would explain everything in detail. Gray Rat is a city in the center, around which there are 12 small settlements. So as not to get confused in them, they simply came up with names by letters, starting from A and ending with L. We can say that all these settlements survive at the expense of the main city. When they need to exchange scarce goods, they go there. Having dealt with this a little, the guy asked if there are programmers there who understand computer coding. It is desirable that they still know how to create games. Considering what had happened in their world, Lilu looked at the young man as if he was talking about some unreal things. Finally, the beauty asked if the young man was really talking about an ancient and primitive thing. Realizing that the young man actually said something that was irrelevant for a parallel world, although the one in which the disaster occurred, and therefore he said with humor that it was probably difficult to find people who would understand something like this. Scratching her head, the local resident explained that they probably didn't have any, since even before the catastrophe started, they started using smart brains. Although she immediately happily shouted that there was a former head of ancient technologies in their camp, if necessary, he was also well-versed in smart brain technology. Grabbing her friend's hand, the girl immediately dragged him forward, stating that there was no need to waste any time. They were going to see this scholar immediately. Chen Yan shouted in fright that he could walk on his own. There was no need to drag him anywhere. Moving around the city, the guy was interested in whether any of the locals do not close the doors. Lilu explained that they have nothing of value in their homes, except for this. In the wasteland, the most valuable thing is unity. Without it, it is impossible to survive in the most difficult conditions. Anyone who steals something and violates this unity will be expelled from all settlements as soon as they are caught. Chen Yan didn't ask any question, realizing that it was actually possible to survive in this place if everyone stayed together. After a while, the guys came to a certain house, and the girl said that the scientist she was talking about lived here. Going inside, the young people noticed a man who was standing behind a screen and talking about delicious meat, while he was holding an axe in his hands, which looked very creepy. But the local resident was not afraid of this at all. She called Uncle Wei that she had come to talk to him about something. The man said that the girl was very lucky today because he just caught a fat one. And then he continued to say that the beauty can take her hind legs if she wants. Hearing that Lilu was very happy, The young man asked what the residents of a certain city were talking about. When Chen Yan entered the room, he was horrified to see a huge giant rat in front of him, about the same size as the one he had encountered on his first day in this place. After that, the young man asked if it was true that this rodent had somehow mutated. Li Lu explained that this is true, not counting zombies. Rats are the most common mutants. An adult grows up to about half a meter, and they are also the main source of meat. Realizing that it was necessary to get down to business, the girl turned to the scientist and announced that she had found a job for him, explaining that he was looking for a good guy who was looking for smart employees, and he paid very generously. After looking at the stranger in surprise, Mr. Wei asked what kind of generous payment this boy could offer, adding that it all looked like a real scam. When he shook hands with the scientist, our hero politely replied that he needed technical specialists who understood smart brain system. If they meet its standards, the monthly fee is 15 kilograms of rice and flour, plus 5 kilograms of fresh meat. The man had not heard of such products for a long time. He could not believe that someone could still use something like this. Chen Yan said that he wasn't deceiving anyone. If they didn't believe him, he could leave a prepayment right now. The scientist still couldn't believe that such a young man could get such priceless products. So that Mr. Wei wouldn't worry, Li Lu said that if the boss agreed, she could bring the meat right away. Realizing that this is a unique opportunity to get food, the old man explained that he is the best among the locals versed in smart brains. But our hero suddenly noticed that he was not quite understood correctly, because what he plans to do has nothing to do with it. And then I asked my new friend if he knew anything about those ancient computers that were once there. The young man said that he needed people who understood exactly that primitive technology. The surprised scientist stared intently at the boy who was standing across from him, not understanding why he needed computers. Mr. Wei admitted that he had heard about such devices, but their functions are very primitive, and the user experience is terrible, with no real value. The young man explained that he just needed someone who was familiar with this technology. The scientist thought to himself that the products that this boy offers, he will not get anywhere, and therefore you need to agree. Coming closer to the guy, the man asked what exactly the boss was interested in. Chen Yan said that the ability to use a computer to write code and create software according to its requirements. Mr. Wei asked if he didn't need to manually create a 0.4 nanometer scale himself. After hearing that this should not be done, the scientist asked again if they also want him to develop a super AI core algorithm. Not knowing that our hero has never even heard of such a thing, but rejoicing that such things do not need to be done, the local resident said that in this case, he is ready to do the work that he will be assigned. And he happily added that as long as the equipment allows, he will be able to do everything related to programming. But the software made on a PC is not compatible with smart brains, which then the young man plans to use this device for. Chen Yan had no intention of letting these people in on his plans, so he said that it was no longer about hired workers. And approaching the old man, he noted that a really good employee performs tasks 100% and does not ask why it is necessary. The young man knew that people needed equipment. He said that it would be provided and asked what else was needed. Leaving, our hero added that, at the expense of food, the newly minted employees cannot worry because there will be plenty of products. Thinking about it, the old man said that it would be nice if he could still get smart brain somewhere as an assistant. Some complex codes can be developed on a smart brain and then transferred to a computer, so it will be much faster. The simplest model will do. The young man knew that it was time for him to go, but even so, he said that he would try to think of something to do about it. As Chen Yan walked down the street, he asked his friend if it was even easy to get a smart brain. Li Lu explained that they definitely don't have them in District D, but they can buy them in the city, although it is quite expensive. Our hero said that he can pay with the food he brought today, but he doesn't know if it will be enough or if he will need more. The girl said that this smart brain is expensive for them, but Chen Yan will definitely be able to purchase one. Moreover, he still has some funds left. The boy was happy to hear about it, and now he wanted to know where he could buy a power-up potion. The beauty explained that there were only first and second level potions, so you had to go east to the doctor's Association Distribution Center for something better. Hearing about something like this, the stranger was very surprised. He did not think that there could be something like this in this dimension. But a local resident explained that these people are one of the main forces in the wasteland. Every strengthening and healing potion is researched and developed by them. The beauty did not know where our hero came from, and therefore wondered if he knew about this. The guy decided to say that his organization has always been self-sufficient, so he knows almost nothing about what is happening outside. In any case, the guy needs a friend to go to that association and buy a batch of enhancement potions. The young man went on to say that he would go back to his own place and get Uncle Wei a computer leaving the rest to his employee. But before he left, the young man still had something to say to Lilu. If a beauty gets into trouble during the transaction, she is obliged to ask for food, since her life is much more important than this. The girl, who was used to thinking that there was nothing more important than food, was now confused. But the next thing she knew, she was going to do exactly as her boss had told her. After a few minutes, Chen Yan happily talked about how he had returned safely. The young man claimed that 15 kilos of rice and flour, 5 kilos of fresh meat, and he hired a technical director for less than 400 won a month. So the wasteland can be considered a super amazing place. Realizing that the main task was completed, our hero decided that he can now go about his business. As Chen Yan walked down the corridor, he was happy that everything was going perfectly for him, so he was incredibly happy. At this time, the young man's neighbor was lying on the sofa in the living room, thinking about what she could order for dinner. Zhou Danan did not see her friend, but he noted that the beauty looks amazing in home clothes. Suddenly, the blonde heard a sound, so she immediately turned around and called out to her neighbor. Realizing that the young man was looking intently at the girl quickly grabbed a pillow and shouted that the young man should not drill her with this strange look. However, at the same time, the beauty asked what the guy was doing here. The front door was closed, and she recently looked into the room to the neighbor, but there was no one there. Chen Yan couldn't admit it and said that he had been at home all this time, and the girl probably just didn't notice him. And realizing that the questions might continue, he left. But before that, he announced that he could buy a neighbor dinner that evening. Zheng Jinglong muttered to herself that she was convinced that all men were exactly the same. Standing on the street, the young man said that his second neighbor did not pass the audition, so she currently works part-time in an electronics store. That is why our hero decided to go straight there, realizing that he urgently needs to get a good computer somewhere. At this time, a customer was asking Shuya if she might have something else to think about. It was obvious that the man was insistent on his own and wasn't even going to leave, at least not until he got his own. But the employee was not at a loss, explaining that in this store they sell computers and do not provide the services that the visitor hints at. Chen Yan, who was already in the store by then, asked the consultant to come to him if the girl was available, of course. The young man explained that he had several questions that he would like to ask before making a purchase. Approaching her friend, the blonde explained that her flatmate just saved her because she could no longer communicate with this fat guy. The young man did not understand what was wrong. He assumed that this person was haggling as much as possible so that the price of the goods would be reduced for him. But Shuya explained that this man builds a computer for 8,000 yuan. Despite this, he wants the girl to have a drink with him in the evening. And after all, she is decent and did not hint at anything like this. However, then the blonde caught herself. She realized that her friend had come to her for work, and this was not for nothing, and therefore she wanted to know what he needed. The guy did not want to spoil the mood of the beauty, and therefore humorously replied that he was going to open his own company and therefore needed a good computer. Chen Yan loudly stated that he wanted his roommate to help him build a top-end device. After hearing about this, the seller explained that the most top-end configuration costs more than 100,000. At the same time, the guy opens a company, although he does not play, and therefore it is not clear why to buy such an expensive assembly at all. The young man was not at a loss, explaining that he needed a powerful machine to test the software load limit. Leaving, the girl said that now she will bring what the buyer asked for. The fat man, who had recently molested the blonde, now told our hero that he must definitely get this beauty. At the same time, he wanted to know what the youth was going to collect. Pointing to one of the most expensive models, Chen Yan proudly stated that this was the one that would suit him best. Seeing the top-end assembly, the man could not believe his eyes that some boy could afford something like this. At this time, the seller returned to the store, announcing that she had brought what they had agreed on. And then she said that the guy owed them 103,000 and therefore would like to know how he plans to pay. The fat man didn't fully believe that the payment had passed right in front of his eyes, but it was true. Clutching his head, the blonde complained that some boy could afford something incredibly powerful. As our hero left, he asked the fat man if he would like to have a drink with him later. Running away, the customer shouted that he didn't want anything at all because he saw something that he couldn't move away from. At the same time, Lilu was wandering around the gray rat, who was going to do the best job given by the boss. Strange people who were on the street noticed the beauty and immediately began to get acquainted with her. The girl wasn't going to be rude, but she didn't want to communicate with strangers either, so she politely refused and went on. Communicating with each other, residents of the city noticed that the girl's backpack was filled to the brim. Therefore, there must have been something valuable in it. A friend of our hero heard what these people were whispering about, and therefore after a moment she shouted for them to go their own way. Unsheathing her weapon, the beauty continued to say that she shouldn't be blamed if something more dangerous than fists was suddenly used. One of the men realized that the jokes were bad, and therefore continued to stand in his place. Another said that he didn't even know that such nice people could carry such dangerous weapons. Lilu had learned a lot over the years, so she knew how to handle a situation like this, even though she was still worried in her heart. I thought to myself that it was necessary to remain calm, not to show the slightest weakness in any case. Otherwise, these hyenas will immediately pounce, and then no one knows how it can all end. After a while, the girl found herself near a small and whole building, which she was looking for. Once inside, Lilu announced from the doorway that she needed a smart brain. One of the young people who works at the place said that the basic model costs 15 kilograms of raw rat meat, and you will have to pay another 5 kilograms for the plug-in. Putting the backpack on the table, the girl firmly stated that she would take the basic model. After weighing the backpack, the worker happily declared that this was a good deal that would surely suit both of them. Young people needed to work, and therefore one of them immediately handed over the product in question. The girl immediately hid the smart brains in her small purse, away from prying eyes. The employee understood that he was facing a difficult customer, and therefore offered to bargain a little more, noting that they had many other useful things. As Lilu left, she stated that she had already purchased everything she needed. At the same moment, one employee turned to another and said that they might need to follow this beautiful woman. However, the employee who communicated with the customer assured the friend that this was not necessary. After that, Lilu walked on with a determined step, knowing that she still had some things to do. A friend of our hero thought to herself that just a little more, and she could actually get caught. If those guys had seen or smelled the cabbage in her bag, the whole town would have gone crazy and no rules would have stopped anyone. After arriving at another building, Lilu said out loud that she had finally arrived here. As she went inside, she heard a man she didn't know greet her politely. After that, the young man said that the customer can look around and choose for herself what she likes best. There were various serums on the shelf, although it was all wrong, and therefore our heroine said it directly. Looking at her bag, Lilu explained that she needed something of a higher level. After looking closely at the customer, the store owner honestly stated that the price of high-level serums is not something that she can afford, and therefore should buy what she sees. The girl didn't want to explain anything. Instead, she took a cabbage out of her bag and stated that she wanted the man to see her payment first. The seller had the same look as anyone who first saw or heard about the products in this place. Suddenly, the man darted forward, though it was hard to tell what was driving him at that moment. A friend of our hero only managed to note to herself that she had never seen such a speed before. Despite this, Lilu knew that you could expect anything from such a person, so she automatically reached for her vending machine. The customer immediately asked the man what he was up to, if he caught himself so quickly. Spreading out his hands, the owner of the shop replied in a gentle tone that the girl didn't need to be afraid of him, since he didn't even think about doing her any harm. He added if he really wanted to rob her, he definitely wouldn't have been stopped by this old cannon, because the weapon wouldn't be able to withstand a level 9 enhanced person. Hearing about this, the girl was almost taken aback. She said that it was simply impossible, because why would the Association of Doctors distribute a level 9 reinforced person to such a remote place? Scratching his head, the man explained good-naturedly that things happen in the wasteland. Then he pointed to the cabbage and asked if he could see what the girl wanted to offer for the unique potion. The wary Lilu still didn't understand what the owner of the shop was up to, and she couldn't trust him, but she knew that if she didn't show him the goods, there might not be an exchange. Seeing that the beauty throws the cabbage, the man immediately shouted that it was a fresh vegetable, which can be seen even by its appearance. Moreover, the cabbage is not infected with radiation, which is generally hard to believe. Falling to one knee, the representative of the Doctors Association began to say that this was all a real heavenly miracle. Suddenly, the girl said in a bold and indifferent tone, "If the man wants, they can make an exchange." Grabbing the cabbage, the owner explained that if the customer is going to ask for something very rare, then she should immediately give up this idea, since nothing like this will happen. Folding her hands, the beauty said that the medic should understand that it is impossible to grow vegetables on their land. Therefore, the one in his hands is simply priceless. Turning away, the man said that he perfectly understands what this rare product means. Then he added that he did not want his partner to be an unprincipled rascal. Smiling, Lilu explained that she had enough sincerity to see this deal through. With a push of a button, the owner of this place finally agreed to the offer. And then he shouted loudly that in this case, he would also go to the meeting, demonstrating his sincerity. Holding a small box in his hands, the man explained that it was a complete set of level 1 to level 6 enhancement serums. After a moment, he pointed to a syringe, adding that it was a healing potion that could cure all diseases caused by cell mutation. In addition, it can offer a set of bio armor made of carbon fiber of the latest model, and it is brand new. The confused girl could not believe that all this belongs to her and therefore decided to clarify this point. With irony in his voice, the representative of the association said that, of course, this is not the case. The man explained that all this is too expensive. Therefore, the buyer can pick up a full set of enhancement serum and medicine. This situation didn't sit well with the angry Li Lu, who immediately asked why the shop assistant would show her the armor in the first place. Smiling, the man replied that it was for their next deal. And then the representative of the association again pressed the same button that he had pressed a few minutes ago. The doctor said that if Li Lu wanted this armor, she would have to bring more Peking cabbage or other vegetables to exchange. Looking at this man in horror, the girl thought that she had no idea how this person knew how she could have other vegetables. Raising his hand, the man noted that this Peking cabbage is too perfect. It proves that this is not a random find. In addition, a faction that has mastered the technology of growing vegetables, it is unlikely that they would grow only one cabbage. They probably have something else. The beauty replied that this vegetable was not grown. She just managed to find cabbage in the ruins of the times before the Great Cataclysm. Smiling, the representative of the association said that even if such ruins really exist, as the girl thinks, it is unlikely that there could be at least something edible, and even more so, vegetables. Then he added that it would be best if Li Lu went back to his own people and discussed these important points. For such factions, vegetables are probably less useful than a set of armor. A local resident decided not to argue with this man, saying that she understood everything. And as she left, she noted that the man should keep this armor until she returned here again. The owner of this shop was talking aloud about how, even though he was exiled to this forgotten hole because of a failed power struggle, he immediately stopped abruptly. After a moment's hesitation, the young man added that it seemed that he had managed to find luck in misfortune, since he had managed to get such a beautiful and healthy vegetable. At this time, Chen Yan was standing outside a large local store, waiting for his goods. After getting out of the car, the courier noticed that the ordered goods arrived, and therefore they want to know where to unload the goods. The young man pointed to the alley and asked the employee to bring the boxes there. The movers who unloaded the boxes couldn't understand why the young man needed meat bought for 20,000 yen. One thing if he was the owner of a restaurant, and another when there was nothing at all. Suddenly, the second worker said that it was absolutely none of their business. There was an order, they had brought it, and now they were unloading it where they were told. As they drove away, the men shouted that if the guy needed anything else, he should just contact them. Standing in the alley, our hero told himself that this alley is an ideal place. Firstly, few people come here, and secondly, there are no surveillance cameras here either. Otherwise, it was not clear where to put all these boxes so that then successfully transport them to the ring. Realizing that no matter what, someone might still enter this alley, Chen Yan decided that it would be safer for this meat to decorate it. At the same time, the young man thought that this is not a long-term solution. With such a huge number, sooner or later someone will notice it anyway. If a young person constantly orders large quantities of food, there is a chance that one of the most curious individuals will decide to check who the buyer is. Chen Yan decided that perhaps he should rent a private factory building first, so that no one would have any questions. In addition, it is necessary to find a partner among food factories, then the variety of products will also increase. Looking at his virtual warehouse, the guy noted to himself that time stops in this place, which was very convenient. Taking out one ice cream, the young man decided to treat himself to a sweet dessert. Chen Yan was glad that the food left in the warehouse could be stored for a very long time until he decided to ship it to the wasteland. Moving down the street, our hero was already making plans for the next few hours when he heard that his phone was ringing. The company that the guy turned to in order to help him formalize a joint stock company reported that the application was completed. This was great news, which meant that Chen Yan was now the founder of the company. After a while, the young man returned home, informing his friend about this, who carefully looked at him. Seeing that the young man quickly went to his room, the girl asked why he was so quiet. The beauty did not let up. She wanted to know if the young man went to the interview, realizing that he needed a job. A suddenly enthusiastic roommate announced that Zhou Dandan did not yet know that he had founded his own company and therefore did not need to work. Not believing what the guy was saying, the brunette asked about it again. Looking at her friend, the girl said that it is not so easy to deceive her, and therefore it is better for the young man not to invent anything. Realizing that Zhou Dandan should not know the truth, our hero repeated the same lie as the second neighbor, announcing that his family finally paid compensation for the demolition of the house, and therefore he now has money. Continuing to be surprised, the beauty shouted that now she understood why the young man decided to invite them to such a wonderful place the day before. And sitting down on the couch, she happily said that she was a little jealous of the guy. After that, she added that even if her entire hometown was demolished, she would still be paid real pennies for housing. Seeing that the hero was bleeding from the nose, the beauty asked why the friend was covering his nose, and at the same time he asked what his neighbor's salary was now. With sadness in her voice, the girl admitted that after all the deductions on her hands, she gets about $5,000. A big plus was that they are also fed at work. Otherwise, she would not know what to do. The beauty wanted to know when she would be so lucky that she too could live as she wished. Chen Yan said with a smile that it was impossible to get rich overnight, of course. However, perhaps the girl will think about moving to his company. After that, the young man happily said that he was ready to pay his neighbor 3 times more, plus the conditions would be very good. Realizing that Zhou Dandan didn't seem to understand the meaning of these words, our hero once again announced that he was offering a salary of $15,000 a month. The surprised beauty couldn't believe that she was now hearing about being offered such a large sum of money. The girl said that if she could save money, she would be able to collect about 100,000 rubles in a year. This means that you will be able to go to the cafe whenever you want, as well as buy a variety of bags. After scratching his head, Chen Yan asked his friend if she was willing to work for him. Folding her hands, the girl admitted that she was not ready for this yet, since the company could go bankrupt in a few weeks. Although after adjusting her glasses, the flatmate asked her friend to tell her more about the company so that she could assess the situation and make an informed decision. The guy did not see the point in hiding important things and said that the company was registered only today. The initial capital will be 1 million yuan. The main direction is computer and mobile games. Rubbing her eyes, the girl said that it all sounds somehow unreliable. It seems that apart from money, there is no sensible idea at all. Getting up from her seat, the girl asked if the guy took into account the costs of development and the technical team. Smiling slyly, the young man replied that this moment is just their main competitive advantage. Zhou Dandan explained that the priority now is to find a suitable office building, and you also need to deal with the registration of a license for the release of games. Realizing that the girl was leaving, despite the fact that they did not finish speaking, the young man asked where the girl was going. A happy and contented beauty said that it was time to quit her job. The young man was flattered that someone believed in him, and this, given the nuance that he had never been involved in business before. When he was alone, he wanted to think about some important things, but at that moment his phone rang. The young man didn't know who it could be, although it didn't matter at all. At that moment, Zhou Dandan entered the room, who had stayed for a while and heard everything her flatmate was saying. The frightened beauty asked what was wrong, because the young man's expression changed very much. He became very pale and frowning. Chen Yan explained that his grandfather had always been in poor health, and recently the doctors said that he had the last stage of liver cancer. The doctors say that in this condition, the old man will not be able to last more than a month. Therefore, the young man wants to go home to see his grandfather in person, because no one knows how long the body can actually hold out. The girl, in a knowing voice, said that in this case, the young man should quickly pack his things and go on the road. And then she went on to say that you don't have to worry about the company, because the girl knows how to take care of everything. Realizing that this is what is needed, our hero thanked his friend for such care. The beauty wasn't used to being treated like this, so she stood still and didn't know what else to say. Embarrassed, the girl finally explained that anyone in her position would have done this, but now the young man had better hurry to catch the bus. As he was leaving, the young man thought that there was no way he could let his grandfather die just like that. He should think of something. It is possible that a potion from the wasteland will provide an opportunity to improve the situation or even completely heal the old man. After a while, Chen Yan was already at the local train station. As the hero was studying his ticket, he heard someone call out to him, thinking to himself that this voice was very familiar to him. It was Liu Chizhan, who was waving her hand, waiting for the young man to pay attention to her. The surprised blonde said that it was just an incredible meeting, after which the beauty tried to remember how long they had not seen each other, suggesting that it was probably about 7 years. Liu Chizhan immediately asked where her acquaintance was going, assuming that he was going back to Banhai. At the same time, the dispatcher reported that landing on high-speed trains of several directions begins. All passengers must go to the landing. Realizing that the blonde is also going to her hometown, the young man said that it is necessary to hurry so as not to be late. As she moved down the hall, she wanted to know where the guy was sitting so she could switch seats with him. The young man explained that he took the ticket at the last moment, so there were only seats in business class. The blonde couldn't afford it, so she said she understood. That was why the beauty suggested that they might talk when they arrived in their hometown. With joy in his voice, Chen Yan explained that it wasn't necessary because he had an idea. The girl did not understand what this man was talking about. Despite this, for some reason, she was a little afraid. Approaching the guides, our hero asked his friend to wait a little for him. The beauty felt extremely embarrassed that she even said what she said, knowing that the guy might look very stupid right now because of her. But the young man knew what he was going to do, and therefore asked if there were still empty seats in the business class. Smiling, the employee explained that in the row where the young man is sitting, only his seat has been sold. Pointing to the blonde, the guy asked to change her ticket for a seat next to him, adding that he would pay the missing amount. Liu Chuzhan didn't think that such a thing was even possible, so she looked at her friend as if he was some kind of alien creature. Passing the ticket to the girl, the employee asked her to keep it until the end of the trip. Leaping on top of the guy, Liu Jiwen thanked her companion for his generosity. Seeing that the young man was embarrassed, the beauty asked what was wrong with him, which made our hero even more embarrassed. Looking away, Chen Yan calmly said that he was fine. As for everything else, it was just a small matter. Sitting in a comfortable chair, the girl said that she was in business class for the first time, and it is fair to say that it is actually very spacious and comfortable. Realizing that it was necessary to change the topic of conversation, the friend asked why the guy suddenly decided to go to his hometown. Perhaps he misses his loved ones. Sighing, our hero honestly admitted that he had to go because his grandfather was seriously ill. Patting a friend on the shoulder, the blonde said that there is no need to worry. She is sure that the doctors will be able to help the old man, who will live for many more years. The young man didn't want to pursue this topic, so he suddenly asked Liu Zhejian what she was doing in the city. The girl explained that she had come to look for clients for her father's factory. Chen Yan asked again as to how much he remembered the girl's dad working in the food industry. The beauty explained that this is actually true, but for the past 2 years, everyone has been buying only products from major brands, and things are not going very well. They work at a loss, and they barely have enough money to pay their workers. And while the girl was sad, our hero thought that he was very lucky because he is in search of a reliable supplier of products. This means that the young man will be able to help an old friend and at the same time gradually strengthen his company in the wasteland. Clearing his throat, the young man explained that it was likely that he could help, and then he added that he was just looking for a factory to conclude a long-term supply contract. The blonde did not believe that such a thing was possible, so she decided to ask again if the guy really had such an idea. Chen Yan wasn't going to reveal all the details, but he did explain that he needed to come and see everything first. Of course, this was a good idea, but the beauty was interested in where the young man got such large orders. After all, they graduated from university at the same time, and it was only a couple of years ago. The guy explained that he recently opened his own company, and one of their partners has such a condition. Realizing that the opportunity should not be missed, Liu Chuzhan suggested that we exchange contacts so that we can discuss everything in detail later. The young man was also interested in this, especially since he understood that the train was about to arrive at the station. Getting into a taxi, our hero explained that first he would visit his grandfather to understand what condition he was in, and then he would come to the factory, and then they would discuss everything. The girl understood everything perfectly, and therefore was not going to push or even insist on an early conclusion of the contract. Embarrassed, the girl thought to herself that she did not expect to meet her friend. Perhaps it was fate that brought them together for something. But I didn't have to dream for long, and the next second someone called out to her. Grabbing her suitcase, the beauty screamed that she was already running. As she got into the car, Liu Jiwen immediately greeted her father, who was acting very wary. Hearing the question about partners, the blonde admitted that she has one bad news and one good. The man did not understand what could be bad and therefore prepared for something worse. Liu Chuzhan honestly admitted that she had done everything in her power. Despite this, she did not find any partners in Dijing. Realizing that this was the essence of the trip, the girl's father wanted to know what kind of good news there could be. The girl explained that the good news is that she met her former classmate on the train. He now needs a large order. In a couple of days, he will come to see the factory. When the father heard that he was talking about a former classmate, he asked his daughter to be as careful as possible. Our hero was not going to waste time in vain, and therefore very soon he was already in the hospital where his father met him. The young man was worried that he might not make it in time and immediately began to take an interest in the health of his grandfather. The man explained that their relative had just taken medicine, and now he was sleeping. But when he wakes up, the young man will be able to come to him. Chen Yan looked as wary as possible, but calmly stated that he understood everything. The guy had a plan, which was why he went to the bathroom a moment later. Our hero knew that there was something in the wasteland that he might need, so he was going to hurry while Grandpa was still asleep. The young man was very determined, telling himself that he simply had to find the medicine that could definitely cure his grandfather. As he moved through the familiar neighborhood, he worried that Lilu might not be home because she had enough things to do. The guy decided that Uncle Wei could help him, but they only met once, so our hero did not know whether he could trust this person or better look at him for a while. To begin with, Chen Yan went to Lilu's house, knowing that if she wasn't here, then she would have to act according to the circumstances. Pushing the door open, the guy saw his friend, who was just changing at that moment. Even though the young man had already started to say something, he froze in place, realizing that there was a real beauty standing in front of him. As he closed the door and stammered, he added that the best time for them to talk was when Lilu got dressed and came out to him. The local resident was not embarrassed at all, and in a few minutes she already went out to her friend. The beauty remembered that our hero was not going to return so quickly and immediately nervously asked what was so urgent. Turning to shouting, the young man asked if it was true that at the level of medical technology that exists in their time, even late-stage cancer is no longer a fatal disease. Lilu explained that during the Great Catastrophe, radiation was everywhere and cancer was more common than colds. If it wasn't treated, humanity would have died out long ago. Realizing that this was good news, the guy asked what was the probability of his recovery now. Throwing up her hands, the local resident said that 100 years ago, this disease was curable in 95% of cases, and after the apocalypse broke out, no one really counted. Chen Yan smiled and thought that his previous suggestions had been completely correct. Realizing that this was a great chance, the young man asked if it was possible to buy such special drugs in Grey Rat now. Scratching her head, the girl noted that in fact it is impossible. And if before the guy thought that he only needed to take medicine, now he didn't understand what to do. Despite this, the beauty said, the stranger should know that the Association of Doctors prescribe drugs for cellular diseases. These drugs also perfectly treat cancer. Chen Yan grabbed his friend's hand and said that he wanted her to take him there immediately. When he heard Lilu asking him to wait for a while, he explained that he couldn't wait because he needed such a drug so badly. Suddenly, the girl took out the medicine syringe that she had received from the association from her bag. Passing this potion to the stranger, the beauty stated that she had already changed something very interesting. The satisfied young man didn't understand where Lilu was able to get it, and in such a short period of time. The local resident explained that the boss explained that they needed to get stronger and faster as soon as possible, so she went to the association and exchanged this medicine for one cabbage. The young man couldn't believe his ears. He didn't think that some cabbage could be given away for such a priceless medicine. The girl thought that the young man was hinting that she was very wasteful and immediately explained that this potion was just a bonus. After that, Lilu grabbed the guy and led him somewhere, although he could not understand what the acquaintance was going to do. The girl did not hesitate and therefore immediately put on the bed the suitcase that the seller of this medicine gave her. Opening the bag, the girl explained that this is all she got. There is a whole complex of drugs that increase endurance. He was surprised to see that the suitcase contained various high-level potions. Lilu was upset, and she started to scold herself again, thinking that the young man was worried because she had lost the price and gave away the cabbage just for these insignificant things. But Chen Yan was as happy as a child, saying that he simply adored the prices here. He's thrilled, but the Archie Association has no idea how valuable their designs are, which means that the young man now has a virtually unlimited supply of potions for all occasions. The local resident wanted to be sure that she did everything right and immediately asked how the guy thinks if she made a good exchange. The young man was silent for a few seconds, carefully looking at everything that he sees in front of him. After that, our hero resolutely closed his suitcase, knowing that he had a real treasure. Taking the girl by the shoulders, the young man asked a counter question about what the beauty says, why he thinks that the deal was unsuccessful. And then, starting to spin a friend, he shouted that they had hit a real jackpot, and therefore we can safely say that Lilu is a lucky mascot. A confused local resident timidly replied that she was glad that she was able to please her boss. As for our hero, he asked his assistant to remember that from now on, they take everything that is offered to them, having heard that the intermediary just wanted the cooperation to continue. Smiling, the guy asked the local woman to tell him more about the man from the association. After hearing that the man was a level 9 enhanced, the young man was very surprised, although he didn't quite understand what that meant. Lilu pointed out that if a young person thinks it's too risky, they can always find someone else. But Chen Yan replied that there was no need to do that. Judging from the girl's words, this He Jianyang is actually a good and reliable partner. The beauty, who had been trying to catch her boss' train of thought now, didn't understand why he felt that way. And the stranger smiled again and said that this representative of the association has the qualities and advantages that they need so much. The first is that as a level 9 upgrade, he has access to higher level resources and channels to get better things, such as the bio-armor set mentioned above. The second thing is that He Jianyang's goal is extremely clear. He wants to break back into the center of power of the Doctors Association. This means that this person will need much more supplies and their cooperation can last much longer. Lilu was finally beginning to understand what her friend was driving at, but she also wanted to know about the third advantage. But with the last nuance, it was easiest, because this man was quite smart. Beauty expected to hear something more meaningful, because she didn't realize how the mind could help them. Pointing to the girl, the young man replied that this Heejanian immediately realized that the local resident was not the main one. Despite this, he did not rush things and impose another deal, realizing that the beauty would not be able to make any decision on her own. The frightened assistant immediately began to justify herself, saying that she did not have enough experience, and therefore she gave herself away so easily. But instead of answering, our hero just gently took his new friend by the nose. Then he added that there was no need to worry and come up with something, since Lilu did a very good job of the task. The local resident wanted to be sure that she would not be hungry not only in the coming days, but also in the coming years, and therefore was incredibly happy that she was able to please. At the same time, Chen Yan walked over to the bed and quickly closed the suitcase he was going to pick up. He explained that he would take these potions with him, but would return tomorrow to discuss other important matters. A suddenly confused local resident shouted that the boss should not inject himself with any of the new drugs for the time being. The guy was not going to do this. Despite this, decided to ask what the reason for this is. The beauty explained that there should be a minimum amount of time between each appointment. Usually you need to wait about 3 days between the first and second levels, and generally more than a week between the second and third levels. In a sad voice, the stranger asked what might happen if the gap was too small. It turned out that in this case, side effects will follow. You need to wait until the body fully assimilates the previous drug, and only then you can move on. After a short pause, Lilu said in a stern voice, "Otherwise, the body will not be able to withstand the load and collapse." Hearing about this, our hero was literally taken aback, because he did not expect that everything was so serious. The problem was that Chen Yan couldn't figure out when he would know that everything had been learned, but the local woman explained that the person who administered the potion could sense it quite clearly, so he would understand when the time came. At that moment, the young man did not want to understand all these nuances, and therefore said that it was time for him to go. The guy really had a completely different goal that day, which he intended to achieve. Finding himself back in the toilet stall with a suitcase in his hands, the young man happily shouted that it was much easier than he originally thought. The wasteland, this is the best treasure trove. Inwardly, he thought that with this magnificent medicine in his hands, Grandpa would definitely recover very quickly. At the same time, the doctor was talking to the main character's father, trying to persuade him to make a decision. As the specialist left, she said that Mr. Chen had better think about what she had told him. The man didn't want to appear unpolite, so he noted that he would definitely do it. The young man didn't even hear part of the conversation, but walked down the corridor in the direction of his grandfather's room, because that was all that mattered to him. Passing by the young woman, our hero thought to himself that this must be the attending physician of his grandfather. Seeing his father's stern look, the boy immediately inquired about what the doctor had said. With sadness in his voice, the man explained that the doctor offered to transfer their relative to palliative care. The surprised hero immediately asked what this would mean. It turned out that the elderly person will be discharged home, and he will continue to take medication to relieve symptoms. This will help make his last days as comfortable as possible. With horror in his voice, Chen Yan asked if it was true that the doctors were telling Grandpa to just go home and wait for him to die. My father explained that the cancer cells had already metastasized, and even the best treatment would extend life by at most 2 months. Dr. Han knows that their family won't be able to handle such expenses, so she offered to issue a discharge. The guy understood everything perfectly and honestly told his father about it, although he kept silent about his own plan. After that, Mr. Chen turned his attention to the fact that the young man needed to visit his grandfather, since he was already awake. Approaching the bed, the young man noticed a relative who was lying with his eyes closed. Hearing his grandson's voice, the old man immediately looked in front of him, not fully believing that the beloved Chen Yan had come to visit him. In a faint voice, the elderly gentleman called out the name of his grandson, who spoke again and again about being close by. Leaving, the man said that our hero should stay here for the time being, and he would go and find out everything exactly on the account of the discharge. In fact, Mr. Chen didn't want his son or father to see him cry, so he hurried away. The guy wasn't going to waste any time. He thought to himself that it was a good thing that there were still no cameras in the normal wards. Chen Yan wasn't going to lie to his grandfather and told the truth about the fact that he had a special medicine that could cure the old man. The guy could not perform any manipulations without the consent of a relative, and therefore asked him about it. After looking at the syringe, the elderly gentleman thought for a while. The grandfather thought to himself that this would definitely not help him, but at the same time he did not want to upset his grandson, who was determined, so he decided to give permission if it made the boy feel better. In the next minute, the young man began to inject an injection into his arm, gradually injecting the potion. When it was all over, our hero carefully looked at his relative, expecting that the effect would come any minute. Inwardly, he hoped that this medicine would work not only in the wasteland, but also in their world. Suddenly, Grandpa's face was red and steaming, just like the effect when Chen Yan injected himself with the potion. Seeing how the elderly man jumped out of bed, the young man asked in fright how he was feeling, realizing that something unusual was happening. In another moment, the old man was as red as a crab, but he was smiling and even shouting something. Suddenly, the hero's grandfather screamed that the body suddenly became so light and all the pain just disappeared in 1 minute. The guy was more excited than ever. He talked about how it actually worked, so it wasn't for nothing. Taking his grandson by the hand, the grandfather repeated that this was a real miracle, but he was worried that the young man might have some problems because of this. He immediately added, if there were rumors that Chen Yan could bring a person back to life, wouldn't all the terminally ill people start looking for their savior? With a smile on his face, the young man asked his grandfather not to worry about it at all. There will be no problems because no one will know the truth. For everyone, this situation will be a simple medical miracle, which is enough in history. No one but the two of them knows about the existence of this miracle medicine, so no one will be able to guess anything. Grandfather loved his grandson. In addition, was grateful to him. The elderly man assured the young man that he would always keep it a secret. As he left, our hero explained that the old man, although he was feeling fine, was best off staying in bed, and as for him, he would go and look for a doctor who would have to examine the patient again. Moving along the corridor, the young man realized that such newfangled medicines could not be sold in their world. It might be too dangerous. But not only that, Chen Yan was also worried about the fact that he still hadn't figured out how things were going with the wasteland. They had a disaster. Despite this, people almost didn't get sick. In addition, they continued to produce excellent medicine. The problem was that the young man couldn't move back and forth because someone from another world might notice something was wrong, and then the case would be in jeopardy. If someone finds out about time travel, our hero will have serious problems. Therefore, all this should remain secret. Suddenly, the ring began to shimmer with bright light, although the guy did not move anywhere. Chen Yan kept thinking that this ring couldn't be replaced, unlike him. That is why the guy needs to increase his ability to survive as quickly as possible in order to cope with any crisis that may happen in this world. The young man realized that he must continue to skillfully play the role of an ordinary person. So, after running around the corner, the hospital visitor turned to the nurse, asking her to immediately check on his grandfather, Mr. Chen Zhan, who had just sat down on his own. The girl did not understand why there was such an urgency and said that first she should check the patient's card. The employee began to read aloud the story of this man, although our hero was already aware of this. The beauty explained that the young man definitely imagined it, although he insisted that he was telling the truth. Chen Yan grabbed the nurse's arm and pulled her toward the ward, continuing to tell her that if she didn't believe it, she could see it for herself. The guy actually played his part perfectly and did everything he could to make everyone else believe it. Chen Zhen, who was confidently strolling along the corridor, asked his grandson what the doctor he went to see said. The girl, who until the last moment was sure that the patient was imagining something, now could not believe her own eyes. And as she ran away, she shouted that she would immediately call a specialist to find out what was going on with the elderly mister. Smiling, our hero said aloud that his plan worked perfectly. The grandfather also had joy on his face. A relative once again declared that his grandson had done something amazing and continues to make it all look like an ordinary miracle. At this time, the attending physician came running, who immediately began to ask about where her patient was. Dr. Han didn't believe what she was told and ran to the patient and shouted that she wanted to see him immediately. The terrified son inquired about his father's health and heard the specialist remark that, much to his surprise, Mr. Chen was actually in good shape. At the same time, the doctor said that this person is so healthy that she is very surprised. Chen Yan, who was standing on the other side of the bed, also asked a question regarding whether his grandfather could be considered a completely healthy person. Adjusting her glasses, the specialist noted that first it is necessary to conduct a full medical examination, which will show what really happened to the old man. Running up to a relative, our hero asked him to allow the doctors to check him again, because only after they conduct an examination, it will be possible to make sure that the elderly person really overcame the disease. Chen Jin didn't mind, noting that he could certainly be examined, but he didn't want it to drag on for too long. After a few minutes, the doctor asked everyone to follow her to perform some manipulations. Before entering the office, Dr. Han said that the hospital would cover the cost of the tests, so you don't have to worry about money at all. The men were happy that everything was going this way and thanked the clinic employee. As the young woman studied the photos, She told herself that she didn't believe what she was seeing. Answering a question from relatives, the doctor admitted that, according to CT scans, not only all cancer cells disappeared, but also the main tumor. At this time, the old man, who was actually feeling great, told everyone that he felt that he was at least 20 years younger. The son saw what his father was doing and therefore reminded him that he had only recently recovered from an illness. His body is too weak, therefore you need to save your strength. Putting the photos on the table, Miss Han repeated once again that there was no need to worry about the man's health. Judging by the results of the survey, all age-related diseases also somehow magically disappeared. Looking at the young man in surprise, the doctor said that she had asked the nurse about the incident. The girl said that at the moment when the patient got up, only the grandson was in the ward with him. And then she added that she would be interested to hear from the guy about what really happened. Spreading out his hands, the young man said that he had no idea himself. They were just sitting and talking. Chen Yan confessed that he wanted his grandfather to see him start a family, and the latter suddenly got up and sat down. Hearing how the specialist noted that this was not scientific, our hero again started talking about the fact that in medicine, there were cases when people suddenly defeated serious diseases, but no one knows how it happened. The son knew that they were already late, so he wanted to know if it was safe to take Qin Jian home. Seeing that the doctor hesitated a little, the man asked in fright what was wrong. Dr. Han explained that what happened to the patient is extremely rare, so she would like to monitor his condition and regularly find out how he feels. And while the happy Mr. Chen was saying something, his father carefully looked at the doctor and said that she should definitely come to visit them. From the old man's condition, it was clear that he had actually regained his energy and desire to live, as he repeatedly asked Miss Han to make sure to come over for tea. And when the relatives left, the grandfather would ask his grandson what he thought about this girl, who could be a great-great-niece for him. But the specialist was not as simple as it seemed. She looked suspiciously at our hero, realizing that he must be hiding something. With a determined step, the doctor returned to her office, pondering what to do next with this situation. Chen Jin's condition was even worse than Grandpa Chu Xin's. If he was able to recover, then perhaps that was where his thoughts stopped. At the same time, the girl touched the phone with her hand, realizing that she had to make one important call. The doctor immediately dialed the number of the girl who belonged to the Chu family. Responding, the brunette explained that she was on her way to a company meeting right away, so there was no extra time to talk on the phone. Speaking to Xin, the doctor said that a patient with late-stage liver cancer had suddenly made a full recovery today without any warning. Hearing about this, the girl immediately stopped in her tracks, not believing what she had just heard. The doctor continued to report that all the blood counts were in the room and all the cancer cells were gone. One of the aides, realizing that President Chu had completely forgotten about the meeting, reminded her of this, but she heard that the meeting should be postponed. Xin wanted to know what treatment was used, as well as for how long. But Ms. Han said that unfortunately, she can safely say that his recovery is not related to her treatment plan. The girl immediately asked the doctor to send her a complete patient file and the entire treatment process to begin with. The specialist again replied that she could throw off everything she needed, but she still wouldn't be able to find anything in these documents. And then she added that she recommends starting with studying the patient's grandson, so it will be much faster and more effective. The patient was already in critical condition, but today, after being visited by his grandson, the old man somehow made a full recovery. The guy's name is Chen Yan, and it won't be difficult to make inquiries about him. The next day, the father, seeing that his son was going somewhere, asked firstly where he was in a hurry at such an early hour, and secondly, why he did not even have breakfast. The young man happily announced that he needed to meet with a classmate. The man said that he was not against it, but asked that our hero return as early as possible, because tonight they are organizing a holiday in honor of the discharge and recovery of his grandfather. Waving to his parent, Chen Yan shouted that there was no way he would miss this event and would be home in a few hours. As he walked down the street, he knew that he needed to return to the wasteland to discuss important matters with Li Lu. Knowing this place well, our hero decided that there are no cameras here. People also go very rarely, and therefore you can teleport from here. And then he thought, of course, his new acquaintance, like Uncle Wei, will not pass for classmates, but it does not matter at all, because he still did not deceive anyone about the meeting. A few seconds later, a joyful Chen Yan shouted that his teleportation was about to start again. At this time, Li Lu, sitting in her room, reached for the snack that she still had left among the stocks. The girl thought that this was the most delicious thing she had managed to eat in a while. But it was not possible to enjoy the snack to the full, because the door to the room suddenly opened and the beauty saw her boss. Jumping up from her seat, a local resident immediately asked if the guy managed to settle the urgent matter that he had the day before. Chen Yan explained that everything went just fine. He also discussed some things with the organization, and they decided to strengthen cooperation with the doctors association. Therefore, their first priority is to get a biosuit. And as for the assistant, she must use all the remaining vegetables and exchange them for power-up potions. Surprised, Lilu explained that the enhancement potions can't be used repeatedly. They never spend them, because they are constantly changing them for some products. But Chen Yan noted that the girl should not worry, because this product will be used not only by them. A moment later, he added that the organization had decided to open a branch in the wasteland. There are many dangers around. In addition to zombies and mutants, there are also other enemy groups. No one really knows what dangers await the inhabitants every minute. And so, a special operational base will be created in Area D, which should become very effective. However, he wanted to know if he could trust the locals, since many of them seemed somewhat suspicious to him. Lilu said that they are weaker than people from large settlements, but they are very close-knit and can definitely be trusted, because during this time they have become almost a family to each other. The guy replied that brute strength can always be increased with potions, although character is still the most important thing. Our hero's plans included strengthening all members of the base, at least to the 4th level. As for the leaders that Lilu belongs to, they should be ranked 5th or even higher. Looking at her friend in surprise, the girl did not know how to react to this. Because strengthening potions are very expensive, only a few people can afford them. Chen Yin didn't always understand the local woman, so he wondered if they couldn't exchange so many potions. Embarrassed, the beauty remained silent for a while, and then replied that it wasn't. If everyone is strengthened to the 4th level, there will be a much more serious problem, because this can split the entire D area from the inside. People, realizing their superiority, will begin to compete with each other. The girl stated that the young man must have noticed that after injecting himself with an enhancement potion, his appetite must have increased. Holding his stomach, the guy admitted that this was indeed the case, although he somehow did not attach any importance to it. However, when he recalled how much time he began to spend on food, he admitted that in recent days he has been eating 3 or 4 times more than usual. With sadness in her voice, the beauty said that this is one of the side effects of these potions, which the locals don't like and don't like. Medications strengthen cells and increase abilities, but also dramatically increase energy consumption. Chen Yan replied that if the number of reinforced people increases in District D, the demand for food will increase many times. If you take into account the many residents, then you will need 10 times more food. Lilu said that this is the case. Moreover, the appetite increases with each new level, which is unacceptable for the wasteland. If one person needs 500 grams of food a day, then all the reinforced ones will need 1.5 kilograms. And then she added that she would need 2.5, maybe even more. A 4th level power-up will eat 8 kilograms of food a day. And if all people are strengthened to the same level, then every living creature near the city will be eaten. If the enhanced ones fail to find food, they will simply starve to death or start hunting ordinary weaker people. Chen Yin thought that it was really dangerous. If only the wasteland was taken into account, then the strengthened ones would not be able to find so much food anywhere, and they would not rely too much on a stranger. Although the guy had his own plan, he didn't want to give it up, knowing that he could solve the problems. As he approached Lilu and grabbed her by the shoulders, the young man explained that there was no need to worry about the food. He was the boss, and therefore it was his responsibility to worry about his people. The assistant's only job is to figure out how to make this base strong enough to fend off any external threat. And as he left, he added that he gave his word of honor that no one on their base would need food, no matter what level of reinforcement the locals had achieved. The girl liked this idea. Despite this, she still turned to the boss. Jumping on the guy, the beauty began to say that he was the most incredible person she had ever met. Realizing that Lilu had embarrassed him too much, the young man asked her to take him to Uncle Wei first. After a while, our heroes came to their colleague, who at that moment was carefully studying something. The man was glad to see these guys and therefore honestly admitted that he was waiting for them. Answering a question about the research, the scientist explained that this computer is actually similar to old technologies, and therefore he has to study a few more details. For some unknown reason, the young man called his uncle not very efficient. However, Wei said that there is no need to worry so much. If it is only necessary to transform the smart brain programs to work on a computer, then he can do it right now. The only problem is that he still doesn't have a working computer to put everything into practice. Pointing to a large box, the young man triumphantly declared that he had already prepared it. The girl decided that she would immediately open the drawer to show the scientist what they had. Seeing this old machine in front of him, which Wei wasn't used to, he explained with some confusion that he would check everything immediately. After that, the man reached out to the network, which he very rarely uses, since their technology has long surpassed something similar. Suddenly, the scientist screamed. He couldn't believe his eyes that computers that were many generations ago could actually work. Getting up from his seat, the employee reported that everything was working properly. there were no problems. However, Wei wanted to know what the young man needed, because if you pull up the right equipment, you will be able to create absolutely everything you want. Chen Yan explained that he wants the scientist to create an online game that can run on mobile phones from 200 years ago. And to make sure that Wei knew exactly what was being asked of him, he revealed that he had downloaded one of these games on his phone and added that their games should be much better and more interesting. The man couldn't say anything right away, because first he had to figure out how it all worked. After a while, the scientist sat down again at the table, but this time all his attention was focused on the game he was playing with enthusiasm. Passing the phone to our hero, Wei honestly admitted that this cannot be called a game, since the worst products of the Great Catastrophe are much better than this horror. He added that if Chen Yan allowed him to borrow some of the games before the disaster, he would finish much faster. The guy happily said that they call it drawing inspiration, which he has nothing against. The most important thing is that the result is good. Our hero explained that when everything is ready, he will definitely write out a bonus to his employee, although he immediately asked how long it might take to develop the game. We said that he does everything quickly, and therefore should be able to do it in a maximum of 7 days. Hearing about such deadlines, the guy was simply taken aback because he could not believe his own ears. The young man knew for sure that the usual game was being developed for several years. Even the simplest mobile game takes at least a few months, but computer games are much more complicated. Even so, in the wasteland, only one person who has never played such games can make one in just a week. The difference between the technology of this place as well as the world in which he lives is simply huge. The frightened scholar was worried. He saw that the boss had gone silent and thought that Chen Yan might think that he was too slow. But then he decided that it didn't matter, that he would do what he could anyway, because even he wondered what might come of it. Suddenly, Wei announced that if necessary, he could make the game even faster. This would not be a problem. There are several other people in the settlement who are familiar with smart technologies, and he can contact them and offer them a profitable cooperation. In this case, they will need about 5 days to complete all the work. Hearing about such deadlines, the guy was simply stunned because it was something on the verge of fiction. After that, I thought that for such a workaholic, the 12-hour shift is already a real blessing. The young man patted Wei on the shoulder and explained that he didn't mind other people taking part in the project. Although at the same time, the scientist asked if they brought more people, wouldn't it create unnecessary difficulties for the boss? Smiling, our hero explained that there was no need to worry, since he had originally planned to hire all the residents of District D. The man couldn't believe his ears. He didn't understand how you could hire all the people who lived in the area because they had to do something useful. The girl saw the confusion of a friend and therefore decided to admit that their boss plans to build a single database for everyone. Therefore, you can hire any kind of people, and the most important thing is that they are loyal and reliable. Hearing these words, Wei immediately began to cry as he was shocked to the core. Falling to his knees, the man began to bow to the young man, saying that he was their savior. Without him, they would simply disappear, since no one knows how long the mutated rats will live in this area. Picking up the old man from the floor, the young man gently asked him not to do this again, because this is the most common job. However, a local resident explained that Chen Yan didn't understand much, as the tax collection time was approaching, so without a stranger, everyone would be in great danger. As he was leaving, he asked Lilu why she hadn't mentioned it earlier, and he couldn't even imagine that someone would want to collect some taxes from people who were already living in poverty. Looking down, the beauty didn't know what she could say about it, as she wasn't the kind of person who liked to complain. Suddenly, a local resident said that it wasn't really such a big problem. They were all used to it. And then she added that she can tell about this nuance, but only after talking to other people. Chen Yan didn't want to push and calmly stated that he didn't mind. Turning to Wei, our hero added that he would leave him the phone to test the game, and in 5 days he wants to see the finished result. Now the scientist did not doubt that he would be able to do everything he had planned, and easily declared it. The young man added that it was already time for him to return to his community, and therefore now he is leaving, but very soon they will meet again. A minute later, the locals were already watching the closed door, which had just slammed shut behind the stranger. Wei knew that he could talk to Lilu about anything, so he asked her what she thought this strange man really was. The fact is that all the old-fashioned things that this person brought look like brand new. They are not even printed, and therefore it is not clear how they could have been preserved so well. The beauty thought about a lot of things herself, but she said that the boss didn't say anything, and she didn't want to ask him if he wanted to, he would tell her something himself. At the same time, the man noted how they can know that this guy came with good intentions, and in fact does not mean them harm. Looking around, Lilu said that they didn't have anything that could interest them in any way, and therefore what kind of evil could they be talking about? She added that just the food he had brought over the past few days would be enough to hire an army of reinforced fighters. The boss has a calmness that can never be found among the people of the wasteland. She is more worried that others might try to harm this stranger. The man suggested that this is the main reason that the girl did not tell him about taxes from the very beginning. The beauty admitted that this young man is their only chance to change their lives, and they should avoid everything that can prevent this. Wei knew exactly what Li Lu was talking about, since he himself lived with difficulty, earning at least some food. And sitting down at the computer, he continued that in this case, he himself should complete the task that he received recently as soon as possible. A few minutes later, Chen Yan returned to the same alley he had teleported from a few hours ago. Holding a SIM card in his hands, the guy said that he needed to buy a new mobile phone. Suddenly, the young man began to feel something strange, although he did not immediately understand what it was. Leaning against the wall of the building, the young man said that he felt some strange pain, which was more like a tingling sensation. Chen Yan didn't understand what was happening to him, as he had never experienced anything like this before. The old man who was passing by at that moment stopped for a short moment because he saw our hero, who was clearly not well. Finally, the guy said out loud that this was probably the sensation Li Lu had mentioned. The strengthening potion was completely absorbed. This means that it's time to use a potion of a stronger level. Taking out one of the flasks from his storage, which served as a ring, the young man decided to immediately inject the medicine.